Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth, also known as the Continuum Chronicles. As always, I'm your host, Chris Kent, the Game Master, and today we're going to be talking about Indiana Jones, Stargate, and Star Wars. But before we get into that, smash that like button, ring the bell so you know when I upload stuff, and make sure you're subscribed. We have a great community here, and it's all thanks to you guys. So thank you so much for being here. The prologue of today's game session takes place in the year 1817 in a galaxy far, far away. Han Solo and Chewbacca are traveling aboard the Millennium Falcon when they're attacked by Imperials. Forced to jump into hyperspace blind, something goes wrong and they're transported to our galaxy where they crash land on the planet Earth. After Han Solo comments on the Endor-like terrain due to the large trees, they venture out to investigate, but Han is killed by the natives. The morning Chewbacca leaves the Falcon to live in the forest, where the inhabitants take to calling him Sasquatch. And that brings us to the main plot of this game session, which takes place in the year 1928. Stargate is unearthed in Giza, Egypt by the Langford expedition. Dr. Langford continues to study the artifact in Cairo and makes a phone call to a friend of his, Dr. Henry Jones Jr., better known as Indiana Jones. Indy is 29 years old in 1928, by the way. So he flies to Cairo, and as he approaches the dig site, a strange old man is muttering something to him in a language that even Dr. Jones does not speak. The old man is saying, "Solo, solo." But Indy misunderstands and says, "That's right, I'm here solo, all by myself." And he walks past the strange man and is greeted by Langford, who brings him to the Stargate. It blows the mind of Dr. Jones, who begins to study the chevrons and the strange symbols on them. The men talk about what kind of language these symbols might be a part of, and Indy says he's never seen anything like it. After a while, more player characters show up, including Carter Hall, who is secretly a Thanagarian known as Hawkman, who crash landed on Earth in the times of ancient Egypt. Also here is an archaeologist named Abdul Fayul, the man who will one day fight in World War II as the Scarlet Scarab. And last but not least is the Immortal, once known as Dagda, Beowulf, Arthur, and Oberon. Dr. Langford refers to him as Red and introduces him to the others. When he shakes hands with Carter Hall, Carter seems annoyed and says, "Red and I have met before." Back in the times of ancient Egypt, Red and Hawkgirl were lovers for a time. That was before she and Hawkman were married. Nonetheless, Hawkman still can't stand Red. Red apologizes if he was disturbing them, and Dr. Langford says, "No, not at all. We were just trying to figure out these symbols." Having been around for such a long time and knowing what he knows, Red says, "They look like constellations to me." Red calls his son, Aramis Pendragon, who currently works at Warehouse 13. The next day, Aramis shows up in a cargo plane with a crate. When the men open the crate, it contains a dial home device, which they connect to the Stargate. They open it, but without proper coordinates, the rope they throw in is destroyed. Red jokes that the ancients found a great way to dispose of trash. The others agree that's not what it was for and go back to the literal drawing board. For the most part, nobody wants to use it for fear they'll be disintegrated. That night, though, Indiana Jones figures out the chevron system and dials up a random corresponding Stargate. They throw the rope through and everything seems fine. So Red sticks his arm in. He tells him what the air feels like, etc. Says it basically seems the same as Egypt is. So Red walks through. Indiana Jones is the next to pass through. Then the dial home device sparks and the Stargate in Egypt closes. Carter Hall asks if they're dead, and Aramis says he doesn't know. Carter lends a hand, putting his Thanagarian skills to good use, repairing the dial home device. Meanwhile, in a galaxy far, far away, Red and Indiana Jones find themselves on the planet Tatooine. They're in a cave not far from Mos Eisley. They walk there, and Red spots the cantina. He says he knows a bar when he sees one and walks towards it. Indiana Jones says, "Yeah, you got enough of the local currency to buy a drink, pal?" I don't think so. Red says, I always figure something out. Indiana Jones looks around and says, you ever get deja vu? Red says, all the time, as his Valentino effect attracts the attention of a beautiful pink-skinned Zeltron woman who offers to buy him a drink. Red smiles at Indy and says, see, things just have a way of working out. Indy can't shake that feeling of deja vu, though. He walks over to the booth where Han Solo shot Greedo 121 years earlier. Indy sits down exactly where Han once sat, and it feels like he's been here before. Just then, some stormtroopers walk into the cantina. One of them tells Red he's in their seat, so Red tells them to go F themselves. The stormtrooper scoffs and says, are you joking? Red says, ah, I get it. I was using slang from my world. No, I didn't mean you should literally have sex with yourself. I assure you it's merely an expression of disrespect. Stormtroopers aren't quite sure what to say. You do realize you're resisting the Empire, right? Red chugs his drink, then says, what Empire? The Zeltron woman decides to leave. Indiana Jones gets his pistol ready under the table. The stormtrooper says, surely you aren't serious. Red says, I am serious, and don't call me Shirley. So the stormtrooper tries to shoot him. Red sidesteps the blast, though, and on Red's turn, he rolls his dexterity versus the dexterity of the stormtrooper, and he successfully grabs his gun. And then it's a contest of his strength versus the stormtrooper's strength. So Red takes the gun from him, no problem. Red spins the gun using skills he picked up in the Old West and says, why don't you ladies run along now? So the other stormtrooper shoots at him and Red shoots back. Then he shoots the first one. Once they're both dead, Red takes the utility belt from one of them and puts it on and throws the other blaster to Indiana Jones. 4 more stormtroopers run into the cantina, hearing the noise, and they open fire. Red and Indy blast them all. Then 8 stormtroopers show up and they blast all of them. Indy says this is getting kind of ridiculous. Red says, is it just me or can these guys not hit the broadside of a barn? But before Indy can answer, now there are 16 stormtroopers. Indy says, I don't like these odds, and he runs away. Red gets critical success after critical success, by the way. It's actually wildly improbable that he could possibly be doing this well, but it's just one of those games where the dice were rolling great the entire night. Red and Indy run through a junkyard where Red sees a large mining droid. He activates it, and the insane old droid suddenly comes online. He tells the droid that stormtroopers are high in iron, and the droid says, compliance. Then as the stormtroopers enter the junkyard, the droid uses his drill bit fists on them. Meanwhile, Red and Indy run back to the Stargate with stormtroopers hot on their heels. Indy gets the gate opened and goes through. Red shoots the dial home device on his end, keeping the Empire from discovering Earth. Stormtroopers flood in, but again, against all odds, Red shoots every single last one of them without ever taking a single point of damage. Meanwhile, on Earth, Indiana Jones returns to Egypt. Thankfully, Aramis and Carter repaired their dial home device. They ask where Red is, and Indy tries to break the news to Aramis as gently as possible, since he thinks Red was his father. But to Indy's surprise, Aramis just doesn't seem that upset. As a brief aside, remember the adventures in ancient Ireland where Dagda could make 12 Dagdas, then each of them could make 12 Dagdas? It's because of this that there's not just one Red on Earth. There's a ton of them, and Aramis knows this. So all that said, then we get into the epilogue of this game session, which takes place in 1943. Indiana Jones, who's now 44 years old, by the way, and Short Round are in California, where the local Native Americans are telling Indy about the legend of the Sasquatch, a huge hairy biped who lives in the wilderness. The Native Americans steer clear of him. So Indy enters this area, and to his surprise, he once again comes face to face with a piece of alien technology that's been on Earth for a while. But this time it's not a Stargate, it's the Millennium Falcon. Indiana Jones ventures inside of the craft and says, I've got a bad feeling about this. The craft has been converted into some sort of a makeshift tomb, and here he finds the remains of Han Solo. and a chill runs down Indiana Jones's spine. Just then, the huge hairy biped grabs Indy and squeezes him. Indy thinks it's trying to bear hug him to death, but Chewbacca's just happy to see that face again. That was it for that game session. We had a good time playing it. We hope you had a good time listening to it. If so, be sure to smash that like button, ring the bell to know when I upload stuff, make sure you're subscribed, and as always, leave us a comment as that really helps us out with the YouTube algorithm. All that said, I hope you guys have a great week, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.